But today we're gonna do two things. One is we've consolidated the maps and suggestions that from our last meeting, and we want to share those. Matt's going to walk us through those, and then we do have the maps built so that we can put addresses in, and you can see subdivisions and actual streets where people live and what school they would go to. So we've narrowed down to 3. Also, we've had a suggestion to maybe stretch some boundary lines, and so we're gonna look at doing some of that today. And then after that, we're gonna come back, and Dr. Warland's gonna kind of walk us through where we're headed with the strategic plan, kind of phase 1, 2, and 3 as we roll out years 21, 22, and 23. Make sure that we're ready to embark on that as we get to August of 21, but really for the school board as well as we get ready to present to them. So those are the 2 objectives tonight. I have us down probably over in about an hour, and depending on the size of our group, if we stay around 20 people, we may just stay in one large group on the mapping activities. I think it might be just as easy. Now, Dr. Warland, on my screen, she's frozen, so hopefully she'll come back and she'll have her presentation. If not, Matt and I will collaborate together to pull that off. So with that, Robin, you go to the next slide. All right. When we last left the meeting in the first part of January, someone said, can you show us where the subdivisions are and where do we see growth? And so we have color coded those again. So the short-term ones are being filled in as we speak. So houses and kids are living in those. We do have one kind of looking at that midterm area as a proposed place, and then you see some long-term facilities in subdivisions being built. We also know there's some that are not on this, but they're in the planning stages. So we're going to continue to grow as a school district. And remember, our objective is twofold. One is to create equity for ESSA, and also to give us some capacity to grow without having to really do some major construction and things like that. So we utilize our facilities to the best of our ability. And so tonight we have 3 maps that we're going to show. Yes, we can go to the next slide. Here are Matt, can you go back to the first boundaries, please? The present boundaries. One more slide back. So here are the present boundaries. So you remember on the far left, you'll see Union and where it stops, and then Creekside is there in green, and it runs the width of our district, and then the length, and then it's kind of narrow. Northwood's right there in the middle of the heart, and then Webb is just below that, and then all the way to the east side is Needham. And so we're looking at trying to make some changes to address, remember, equity and growth opportunities. So with that, Matt is going to come on and tell us a little bit about gathering of all the resources and information we had from our last meeting and where we're headed. So Matt.
All right. Well, based on all the feedback from last time, you have helped us to narrow in on option A, B, and I, and we actually have an I alternative. So looking through them, once again, Dr. Clendenning did a great job on describing the areas for our current school. Option A, everybody really liked Centerline Road being the division. They thought, getting students to Union and being able to utilize that road made a lot of sense on option A. And it also allowed growth for Creekside. As you know, that we've got a lot of neighborhoods that would be in that vicinity. It would allow growth for there. A couple concerns, obviously Webb needs space for growth. They've got a pretty full building, and then we need to keep enrollment still reasonable at Creekside. So that is option A. Option B, which we liked, positives, Northwood's pretty high. And that was kind of a win and a concern. Northwood's high, which is a little bit of a concern, but they're also, if you look at the map, landlocked by other schools. So it might be kind of a good thing, although it's somewhat of a concern. We're going to skip all the way to option I. The other ones, everybody's kind of like, no, that's not really a good fit. I'm scrolling down here. Option I. So on option I, what everybody liked was there was growth at Northwood. It was a difference. And it also had a strong stance on the free and reduced rate, right? So that really balanced it out across the district. A couple of the concerns were the substantial changes to the entire school district, right? Union moves, Creekside gains area, Needham gains area or loses some students, and Northwood is just divided quite a bit. And which is why we had our meeting and we got great feedback. Robin, if you want to go ahead and go to the next one. We had a teacher, I won't give her name, Carly, that suggested we move a line. And that's what she did is exactly what we're looking for tonight. She took option I and she said, what if we moved the blue line, or what if we moved it to the blue line? And her thought was that's going to let some people that call Northwood home continue to call Northwood home. What would that do for us? And that's kind of the feedback we're looking for tonight. As Dr. Clendenning mentioned, this is over right now, it's very high flying over. And then tonight, you'll get some maps that you'll actually be able to dive into the neighborhoods, type in addresses, and go from there. So the next map, thank you, Robin, was us going into 5 maps and looking at that data. Once again, taking the positives, there's some kids that get to still call Northwood home. That's fantastic. Needham, because we took that section out of Needham and moved it over to Northwood, obviously their attendance is lower, which if you look at the chart, their free and reduced drop drastically too. So as we move lines and as we change them, there's going to be different positives and negatives, but we need to weigh out all those inputs from the community to do our best. So those are the 3 we're going to discuss tonight, A, B, and I. Dr. Clendenning, we've got enough people to try to do 2 separate. Yep. If you want to try to keep everybody together. Okay.
We'll do 2 separate. Robin will have to assign us to our rooms. Looks like she's the one in control of tonight's meeting.
So as she does that, obviously we'll get into different rooms. Dr. Clendenning has a link and we'll go through option A, B, and I and get your feedback. We'll give you a little bit of time for you to browse the map, type in addresses, and look around. But once again, we're looking for feedback from you guys and what's important and what are some advantages and some concerns. Dr. Clendenning, back to you, sir.
All right, so Robin is going to assign us to 2 rooms, and really the only 2 people that need to be separated are Matt and myself, because we have the data points for us to look at. When we get to our breakout rooms, you're going to see in the chat bar a link for both of us. We want you to click on that link, and it should come up in your browser. Hopefully you're able to see it. It's going to be map A, and we're going to spend 5 to 7 minutes on map A, talking about what we like about it with the boundaries, what we don't like about it with the boundaries, and then if you have any suggestions, I'm gonna write those down for us, and then we'll do the same thing for B and I, and then if there are any other things that we want to add at the very end. So with that, Robin. All right, Matt, we had some good discussion about our boundary lines. I will tell you from our group, option B seemed like it had the most possibilities to check the boxes that we could do with ESSA, as well as create growth and provide a more consistent home for Northwood. I think that's some things that we looked at in option B. The others had some merit, but only in maybe 1 or 2 schools in that area. So option B would be right now the one we need to tweak a little bit. Anyone else on my group that want to chime in and share reflection quickly? I will say that Carly's suggestion of taking Main Street down to the roundabout and capturing Northwood kids was very popular in our discussions, to get the kids that were going to Northwood now kind of staying in Northwood and still allow them also to maybe walk to school. So Carly, thank you for bringing that to our attention today. So Matt, what did your team come up with?
Well, it's a good segue to our team. We talked a lot about homeschools, and we focused a lot about Northwood. There were a couple maps that kind of divided Northwood quite a bit. And back to Carly's map, being able to call a home kind of made Northwood kind of fit in there. There were different thoughts about Northwood, it being landlocked, it being full, that's kind of a plus on both because it's landlocked. At the same time, our borders can move, right? So depending on how we do the borders, Northwood could have some capacity there. Trying to stay close to our current home schools seemed to be important. Anybody else in my group that would like to add some value there?
Yeah, Matt, I thought the point of, I think in option B, that kids could live within view of Northwood, but then wouldn't go to Northwood. That was brought up as a talking point as well. Just like where their proximity to the school versus the school they would actually attend. Something to consider.
Thank you, Dylan.
All right, so let me tell you about the next steps for this. I shared last time we were going to pause unless the COVID really took a tumble down to allow us to get to August. It didn't. So we're going to pause redistricting to August of 22. However, we are not pausing on making the selection. I would like to have this selection made in April, and then discuss in April, vote in May. And that would give everybody a year to kind of get used to the boundaries, have conversations, and whatever we need to. But before that, I'd like to have the maps available for people to see them in. And the virus is going to play the key lead in this. Until the virus goes down and we can get back together again in person, we're not going to be able to show those maps. We will give them out. We'll send them out digitally, but we do want to show the suggestions. When we take it to the board for final recommendation, part of our strategic plan, we will only take 2 maps probably and let them look at and to discern. And we're also going to tell them, like right now, if it were tomorrow, we would say option B with tweaks was the favorite of the group, and we would go from there. And so with that, that's our journey. And I see a couple questions. Robin, what's popping up?
So a couple of questions. One of them, how do these new options reflect bus times? Are we still able to keep them no longer than 60 minutes? Are we able to shorten any of them? Things like that. And then also Amanda asked if we were going to let kindergarten who start this fall start in the school that they could potentially move to in fall of 22. So they're not disrupted.
Yeah, I like that suggestion, Amanda. So I think we would definitely work on that to make that happen, because that disruption I know is hard. Bus times, we don't have those down yet, but we will look at them. I will tell you, looking at the boundaries, and Doug's with us, he can kind of weigh in. We're still gonna have some long routes out on the western side of our district, just because of the number of student population and just not having bus density out there. But from Centerline over, we should actually be better for our routes. So we'll get those down and we'll share that back out when we come back for our group that's going to be in person. But those are good questions. So after tonight, we will make sure you guys all have the hyperlinks. Feel free to look at them. We're also going to post those out and just make some, people know these are still draft only and we're open for suggestions. Robin, I think we had some more questions come up.
No, Dr. Jackson was just agreeing with Amanda's suggestion about kindergarten and just weighing in on how important it is for their adjustment, school identity, and really just having that homeschool.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Dr. Clendening, with third graders going into fourth grade, would there be any other transitional grades that we might offer that option to?
I think we would be open to any parent as we unveil that for interdistrict transfer. I don't know that we would limit that, but I do like the kindergarten suggestion. And then obviously third to fourth, if we could create either keeping them back at that home grade for this year and staying for one more year, we would definitely look to do that. We want to make this as simple and as smooth as possible. We know there's going to be some disruption, but we don't want to have a bunch, especially coming out of the pandemic and just getting back to normal again. So those are some key things, and then we'll continue to look at that. So Barb, that's a really good question, and I appreciate that.
Are we still going to elaborate those intra-district transfers, or will that process look different at all after we redistrict?
Dr. Orland, he's in charge of that. Let's see what she has today.
I unmuted. If I lose you, I am so sorry. I keep getting bits and pieces. Interdistrict transfer process, we will still maintain the process. I will say, however, that in the midst of redistricting, we may need to rethink what that looks like and how that works, because as I'm listening to the conversation unfold, I'm anticipating scenarios in my head. So I think that's something that as we roll out the redistrict plan, we will need to roll out the process and the guidelines, expectations for interdistrict transfer. So that's a great question. More details will need to come on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Orland.
You bet.
Well, as we finish up redistricting, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's weighed in on this difficult process of shifting some schools. But everyone's input has been valued, and we look forward to creating the best environment for everybody. And speaking of the best environment, the strategic plan also looked at how do we create the best learning environment for our kids in this decade. We still wanted to continue to, dream, connect, achieve, and have adventures. And as Robin pulls up our slide deck, those are the 4 words that's going to really drive our plan. If you look at the things that we've been doing the last decade, many of those things would fall into those words. But we really want to highlight them because we want that learning environment to come alive for kids. So our strategic plan will focus around these 4 words as we introduce learning environments and opportunities and instructional strategies that make these have something tangible. It's also a way for us to measure those. And so tonight, I've asked Dr. Orland to kind of give us a preview of kind of where we're headed in that first year. Also, I want everybody to kind of weigh in a little bit. If you think of something that maybe we talked about a year ago and we maybe didn't have it in here, now's your chance to tell us. And then in February, we'll get more details because we're actually going to present for the first time to the board. And before we leave tonight, I know last time I asked if anybody wanted to, and I did not get one person to email me and say, I would love to present to the board. So I'm still looking for volunteers on that. And we'll give you one more chance tonight. So Dr. Warland, Dream Connect, Adventure Achieve, looking ahead.
Yes, again, thank you, Dr. Clendenning. I'm sure everyone will be eager to help us at the board presentation right after this conversation. If I lose you, I want someone please to unmute or somehow put in the chat that you can no longer hear me. Try to find a way to connect with me if you can no longer see me or hear me. That would be helpful. As you're sitting there thinking, I was taking a quick poll. It looks like approximately 19 of you are internal to the district, and somewhere between 11, 12, it keeps changing, of you are external to the district. So if you are a parent, a guardian, or a community member and you're wondering, as I give some of these highlights, how can I get engaged? How can I be involved? I've participated in the task force. I've been involved in these conversations for a year or more. What's my role? If you are passionate about some of the topics that I mentioned, if you have an expertise, or you just want to sit and talk with others and make things happen, we want to hear from you. Reach out to Robin and let her know, hey, that's a place where I can have a voice. If you are an employee, please know there will be numerous opportunities for you to innovate and explore as we dream, connect, adventure, and achieve. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. I want all of you to know, regardless of whether you're internal or external, the plan is designed for the next 10 years to be nimble and to be responsive. If this year has taught us nothing but the need to be resilient, that we shall be. So this plan is meant to be something that allows us to engage in conversation and pivot when needed. When we start talking about the plan we're proposing to the board, as Dr. Clendenning mentioned, there are macro level pieces. So 10,000 foot view, there are three key things that you will see in the proposed plan. Individual student growth, one of our key drivers, one of our primary guiding principles that will not change for Franklin Community Schools. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, because I think that's an area where many of you may want to engage. Another key component is a culture of professional growth and innovation. So that component involves all of our employees, looking at retention and recruitment, innovation and engagement. And finally, financial stewardship. How do we fund, dream, connect, adventure, and achieve? So let's look at individual student growth for now, for this population. The three key goals are the learning environment, college and career readiness, and social emotional learning. Now, each of those goals has a number of objectives and strategies that are in the proposed plan. So let me talk about some of those components that you may be engaged with or hear about over the course, let's just say, of the next 3 years or so. The plan is a 10-year plan. That's a long time. But let's think about just kind of what we can touch and see for now. So you're gonna hear about, we're gonna talk about, we may be having a conversation just like this on alternative educational programs. You've heard of other districts doing alternative schools. We do not have an existing robust program K through 12 at Franklin Community Schools. So the development of that option and some initial implementation, you will start to see that roll out in the proposed plan for the next 1 to 3 years. Teaming is another big rock, if you will. We did a soft rollout at CBIS this year. You're going to see movement toward a more intentional, strategic, robust format at CBIS and Franklin Community Middle School. As part of that teaming, we're looking at associated support structures. We're also looking at refreshed exploratory options and enhanced co-curricular and extracurricular options. Some of you sitting right here were engaged in those conversations about exploratory options, co-curricular and extracurricular options in one of our previous conversations when we met before COVID, I think, in the media center at the high school. So those conversations you're going to see reflected in the plan. Redistricting, of course, is another one, or we've had those conversations the last 2 meetings. We just talked about that. Another key area will be STEM. And when I say STEM, I'm talking broadly. So STEM, digital citizenship. We now provide devices K through 12, but we're doing digital citizenship in 7th grade. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so what does that look like across that K through 12 span? Esports is another one some of you may have been engaged with. There's a lot of research about esports right now, so we'll talk more about those STEM related areas, robotics and robotics clubs and opportunities in the curriculum. Graduation pathways, you're going to hear a lot more about that. We're going to do some robust conversation about how do we look at grad pathways K through 12? What does that mean to a 5th grader? What do we need to think about as an 8th grader? And how are we intentional about those conversations? Senior projects, we're piloting those for the first time this year. You will see those take on a more systematic process. Ag will be part of that conversation as one of our key pathways. STEM I already mentioned. And finally,
Dr.
middle.
Warren, before you leave STEM,
Yes.
talk about the M, math. What are our thoughts about math?
I'm going there. Yes.
Yay!
Yes. So I'll do math and then come back. Math. Thank you, Dr. Clendenning. We are looking at the conversations are just now starting. They've been percolating over the last few months, but we're going to sit down, and I would really like to see some of you engaged, maybe even some of your friends in the community, in looking at how our students are progressing from K to 12 in mathematics. Who are we serving in that current pathway? Who are we not serving in the current pathway? And what partnerships exist for us with local universities? And so we're going to have a robust conversation about that. And I would even piggyback on that in the plan. We talk about a broader look at our high ability curriculum, not just the mathematics component of that and how that connects to that math journey, but also looking at our ELA and how some of the resources we've currently adopted and some of the writing conversations we're having and how that all interweaves with high ability. Then I'm going to circle back around to the last micro item I'm going to mention, and that's just an ongoing look at a review and a refresh of our mental health programming and our counseling curriculum. Now I'm going to stop because I just talked about a lot. And I want to say that there are a lot more objectives and strategies in the plan that I just mentioned. It is a 10-year plan. We will not do everything in the first 1 to 3 years. But as you can see, we will do a lot, and we will have a lot of fun, and it will take a team of people. Now, how do we get there? I anticipate this question, and Dr. Clendenning talked about this a little bit. We will continue to vet the draft we have. It's circulating among different constituent groups internally right now. We will then be seeking board approval this semester, and as Dr. Clendenning mentioned, we will start that process coming up in February. Once we've have a document, a plan that's approved, we will initiate implementation teams and implementation leaders. Those teams will draft action plans, including timelines, prioritizations, and measures of success. And then we will have a public dashboard, as Dr. Clendenning mentioned, that will include the metrics that we will be using, again, to measure our success and communicate with our community where we are. Now, I want to end like I started. You've now seen a commercial or heard a commercial. You haven't seen a commercial. But I want you to think about, where do you want to engage? What conversation do you want to be part of? Where do you have a passion or an interest? Do you know someone with a passion or an interest? Did you not hear something you thought you would hear? Now, again, I just shared a commercial. However, if you're passionate about something that we've talked about in one of these meetings and you did not hear it, or you did not hear me allude to it, please reach out to me, reach out to Robin, and let us know. This is really important work that we're doing. I don't know if you all realize when you come to these meetings how important your engagement is, but this is a key part of our forward movement. So thank you. We encourage you to continue to engage and ask great questions.
All right, Dr. Warren, thank you very much. I know she didn't mention orchestra, but I know that that's on the plan someplace.
I said extracurriculars and co-curriculars. In the plan, it's a little bit more spelled out, but I alluded to it.
Yeah. I actually today, kind of behind the scenes, I sent Dr. Warren an article about how orchestra ties into math and achievement quite well, and the research came out of MIT. So I think we can probably take them as pretty good at their research. But anyway, and then on the last one on the stewardship. One of the things that I've really challenged Dr. Warland and Ms. Gross is that on the financial side, I want people to know what's important to us. So when they look and see how we spend our money, they understand individual student growth is where we're going. We understand that, professional and recruit and retain is a very important part of us. And so that's what we're going to be focused on in the plan. You're going to see it both illustrated as well as in an infographic style as well on that. We do value our people and the community. We want everyone to hold us accountable to our plan. It will be nimble, it will be flexible, but we're also committed to staying with it to really impact kids. Yeah. One of the things I think we're trying to read the lines going through. Dr. Warren, you want to comment on that one?
Well, okay. So as I market for nonprofits in the community, there are certain words that we're super familiar with. I mean, and I've got to be like, I love some of our board, but I'm like, you can't say those words. No one knows what those mean. Like, just stop talking for a second. And I don't mean that in a mean way.
No,
but
absolutely.
That's all that I heard. And I feel like I'm kind of yelling, sorry. That's all that I heard when Brooke spoke, was like, these are all words that like some people are just going to be like, I can't look at this. I don't know what any of these mean.
Okay.
So you might just think about that.
Well, let's do
and
this.
Some of them you have to have too.
I agree 100%. How about Amanda and Brooke? You guys could get together, or if anybody else, and we can see a draft of some of the things we're working on, and really try to make it user friendly. And Robin will also be a part of that journey, as she is our ultimate wordsmither in the PR side. But Amanda, that's a really good point. We in education are so good at throwing around jargon that we get lost or the words, and we don't want to do that. We want to make this clear and simple for everybody.
And it's not just you. I mean, when Joey talks about Lily stuff, it's like, stop it. Like, stop using the acronyms. I don't need another acronym. It's just when we get to be good at certain things and we just forget that others don't have that knowledge.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Dr. Clendenning and Dr. Warland, we've also talked a little bit about careers and trades. We have a question about just daily living skills, checkbooks, things like that, personal finances, things like that. Is any of that on the horizon or in our thought process?
Robin, can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see anyone's picture, so I wanted to confirm. Actually, Robin, part of that life skills component, even the financial literacy component or the balancing your checkbook, how do you pay your taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Some of that is actually integrated already into some of the college and career readiness courses we have, but other components of that are integrated into our counseling curriculum. So the lessons that we do and the order that we do those lessons in. And so that's another area, I'm glad that was actually mentioned, that we will be reviewing to ensure that we're dotting all of those I's and crossing all of those T's. We will also be looking at that, Robin, sorry, there's a secondary piece as we look at those grad pathways and some of the diversity in those pathways and how we connect or partner specifically in the plan. We talk about partnering with C9, looking at CTE courses, looking at internship, externship opportunities, and especially through that senior project as well. So I'm hopeful and confident that you will see various touch points of those components intentionally in the curriculum.
And one thing Dr. Warren talked about was kind of reviewing our related arts or exploratory options. And I will tell you that when we talk about some hands-on experiences for those kids in grades 5 through 8, that's what we're talking about. Also, another place where you're going to see that come alive is in the alternative education space, where we know that we have some kids that need to continue in a different pathway. If COVID taught us anything, is that school can be done many ways in many places, and we want to capture that. And so, although we didn't mention that was specifically in where it was going to fit, I know we've had conversations with some middle school teachers. Dr. Warren and I have talked about where do we get these hands-on experiences and real-life experiences to help our kids, and so that'll continue to come alive with what's going on. All right. I see, and Heather, I absolutely will. We will define, actually inside the strategic plan, we'll have a glossary of terms, even if we can't boil it down to simple concepts. One thing that Dr. Seaver once told us was, it's better to define them so at least all know the definition and then share that. So we'll definitely make sure that comes to the forefront. I want to thank everybody for giving up a lot of your time over the last 18 months. Our journey is just beginning, though. That's what I love about Superintendent's Task Force. We get to all meet and continue to work as we go forward. We do have at least 3 more meetings this semester. Our next one is going to be on February 25th, I think is what you told me. Is that right? Did I get it right, Robin? It's the last Wednesday of the month. I know that. And it's the 24th. Thank you. In that one, we are going to actually break down and start talking about each of the domains of the strategic plan, and then start having this group help us listen to the critical questions that we're going to have to answer that, see where you can fit in, and then kind of move forward with the next steps. And then the board is going to hear for the first time in February about the plan. They're going to adopt the plan in concept, right? They're not going to go through each line item and say yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes. They're going to give big yes to the plan, that this is what I'm thinking right now. And then we'll keep coming back to the board as it gets revised with this dashboard and structure along the way. So we're gonna introduce it in February. We're gonna ask for board approval in March, and then April and May we'll have it out for everybody to see, and then it becomes very, very tangible and visible as we start August of 21 together. And knock on wood right now, but we're going to be hopefully all back K-12 and moving forward. And so that's what the plan is. As we head into that, I've got Barb and Jason saying yes, they'll help. If anybody else, we would love to have other people help present to the board. Right now, the February board meeting will be in the LGI room. And today, the county moved back to orange status from red. So that's good news. The COVID's starting to come down. So we will have available spaces for people to come in with social distancing and wearing masks. We're going to set the room up. Traditionally, the board sits on the south end and the south side of the building on the wall. We're going to actually have the board in a U shape, and we're going to use the screen as the front of the room in the new LGI structure. But we will have people come and help present live what's going on. So with that, I will just say thank you again for tonight, giving up another night, another Wednesday, an hour of your time to be with us. We have a great district. Parents, you guys are wonderful. Admin, teachers, central office team, and of course, communications. Our PR person is really good too. We want to make sure that that everybody knows, just from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate that everybody has a voice and wants to make a difference for our kids, because we exist to grow kids. Individual student growth 10 years ago and 10 more years ahead will still be number one. And that's what we're about. So with that, I'll just say good night. And thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you have a question or two, feel free to reach out to Brooke, Robin, or I, and we'll be glad to answer them.